Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the What If guy, back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Issei Becomes Papa Dragon. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Issei Hayato is many things: a hero, a pervert, and a genuinely good person. But if you knew him personally, you would never think of him as father material. Yet, that was exactly what Issei was about to become. He had been living alone in the woods of Kyoto for a couple of years at this point. After the life-threatening events of fighting Trihexa, the girls in his harem decided it was time to re-evaluate their relationship with him. This decision made Issei really sad, but he understood that he could never force the girls to love him, so he agreed to the idea of a break. However, he never imagined it would last for 2 whole years. By now, Issei was 20 years old and had lived in solitude, with only Draig and occasionally his parents for company. Although heartbroken, Issei had improved tremendously without the distractions of his previous life. In a way, it was a blessing in disguise. During his time alone, he trained harder than ever before. While he had always trained diligently, now he could confidently say he wasn't weak without his sacred gear. He knew he would never reach a point where he wouldn't need it as danger always found him, but he had grown stronger than most high-class devils. He trained his magic under the guidance of Rias and Aquino, incorporating new exercises that Draig suggested. His magical abilities were now nearly on par with Aquino's, although he suspected she had surpassed him during their time apart. His additional training focused on stamina and strength, enabling him to fight longer and more effectively than ever before. Issei's appearance had also changed drastically. Gone was the weak, skinny body he once had, along with his baby face. Instead, he was now tall, lean, and muscular, sporting a manly beard that he initially thought was excessive but eventually grew to appreciate, believing it gave him a gruff, masculine look reminiscent of a certain action star. Back to the present, Issei had just woken up and groaned as he exited the bathroom. Draig, why do Mondays have to be so terrible? A gauntlet formed on his left hand, and the green orb inside it glowed as Draig replied, "I don't know, partner. It seems like that's just how the world is. For some reason, God made that day the worst." Issei yawned and stretched before heading to the kitchen. He opened the fridge and frowned upon discovering he was out of orange juice and eggs. "Looks like I have to go grocery shopping first thing in the morning." "Yes, it seems the curse of Mondays strikes again," Draig commented. Issei chuckled at his partner's banter as he put on some shoes. He slipped into his red Nike shoes and donned a black leather jacket with a high collar. Just as he opened the door to step outside, he heard a sound. Confused, he looked down at his doormat and noticed a basket. Raising an eyebrow, Issei knelt down and pushed aside a teal-blue blanket, revealing a white-haired baby inside. Draig's voice came through in disbelief. "Is that what I think it is, partner?" Issei gulped. "Yup, but the real question is, why is there a baby on my doorstep? I live in the woods, who would leave a baby here?" Draig blinked a few times before responding, "It's gotta be someone strange, that's for sure. Anyway, grab the note and read it." Sighing, Issei picked up the paper note and read aloud, "Hello Issei-hitan, I'm leaving this baby with you to take care of her. She's a very strong and valuable child, so you better be a good parent, you pervert. Oh, almost forgot this is God speaking. I didn't actually die, I just wanted to take a vacation for a while. Anyway, bye-bye, Grappin Dragon." Both Issei and Draig fell silent before shouting in surprise, "What? God is still alive?" Unfortunately, their outburst startled the baby girl, causing her to cry. Issei quickly picked her up, gently patting her back while rocking her softly. Gradually, she calmed down and fell back to sleep, much to Issei's and Draig's relief. "Oh, I guess I'm a father now," Issei said aloud. Draig blinked in astonishment. "Wait, you actually plan to do this? Then again, this does sound like something that unpredictable God would do. Just don't tell her I said that." Issei nodded, chuckling at his partner's comment. "So, how exactly do I take care of a kid? Also, what should I name her?" Draig shrugged. "Bro, I'm a dragon. I have no clue how to take care of a human child, or mostly human child, since I can sense angelic energy inside her along with some sort of sacred gear, but that's a discussion for another time. Issei smacked his forehead in annoyance before making the baby more comfortable. He exited his house and approached his crimson-red truck, which was practical without being overly flashy. He climbed in and programmed the GPS for a store that specialized in children's items. He needed to pick up a car seat, bottles, formula, a crib, and some toys to entertain the little one. And of course, a name. The trip to the store went smoothly, and he returned home with some food, grabbing McDonald's breakfast and orange juice along the way. Although it took a few hours, Issei managed to gather everything he needed. The baby woke up a few times, but he made her some milk and fed her, gently burping her to help her relax. He officially learned that the baby was a girl after changing her diaper. That was also strange since he never knew such a small baby could create such a mess. It was now a bit after noon, and Issei was looking at the little bundle of joy in the crib next to him. He smiled warmly, thinking to himself, this isn't too bad. Although it'll probably get harder from here, and I'll have to fend off potential suitors for my baby girl when she's older, it honestly feels pretty nice being a dad. As he continued to watch the girl sleep, he brainstormed names for her. Unfortunately, every name he thought of was from a female protagonist in adult-themed stories, so he couldn't use any of those. Thankfully, when he thought all was lost, Draig spoke up with a suggestion. What about Eri? Taking a moment to let the name settle in his mind, Issei hummed in thought before approving, that works, and it fits her. But now I have to take her to an adoption center or... Another piece of paper appeared in front of him, and he grabbed it from the air. He read it aloud again, I already wrote up the papers. You're now officially Eri's father on paper. Also, here's the legal documentation love, God XOXOXO. A few papers appeared in a binder, and when Issei opened it he found Eri's birth certificate and other important documents. He sighed and said, God is so strange, but this makes things easier for me, so I won't complain. Issei continued to care for Eri over the next few months. Although it was indeed rough, he enjoyed it nonetheless. It was now Christmas in Kyoto, and Issei had decorated the cabin with all sorts of holiday decorations. He never told anyone in the ORC, but he loved Christmas, probably even more than Asia and Irina. Currently, the single father was about to leave with Eri to get pictures of the angelic girl with Santa Claus. He placed Eri in her car seat before driving to the mall in town. It took a little over 20 minutes to get there, and Eri had fallen asleep on the way. Issei decided to walk around the mall for a bit until it was time for pictures. He entered a cafe that wasn't too full but still had a decent number of customers for this time of day. He walked over to the counter with Eri in a carry vest in front of him. After waiting a bit, it was time to order. He asked the female cashier, "Can I get a medium hot chocolate and a chocolate muffin, please?" The female worker blushed and replied, "Sure. Can I get a name for your order?" Issei responded shortly after, "Put it under Issei, please." The female worker nodded, and Issei moved to the side to sit down and wait for his name to be called. Eri had woken up during that time, and Issei started to play with her, making the precious girl giggle adorably at her father. Finally, his name was called, but as he got up to go to the counter, a familiar voice called out, "Wait, Issei, is that you?" Issei turned to his right and saw a silver-haired woman with green eyes. He was shocked to see her but greeted her happily, "Oh hey there, Rosswe. It's good to see you again. How are you?" Rosswe blushed at how handsome Issei had become but answered, "I'm good, Issei. May I ask why you're here in Kyoto?" Issei picked up his drink and muffin and walked to a nearby table to continue their conversation. "I've lived here for a couple of years now, Rosswe. I'm at the mall because I want to take little Eri here to get some pictures with Santa Claus." Rosswe looked down to where Issei pointed and just now noticed the white-haired baby girl strapped to his chest. She gasped and asked excitedly, "Wait, you're a father now? Tell me which girl was lucky enough to have a child with you. I bet it was Kaneko since the baby has white hair." Issei faltered for a moment, sadness flickering in his eyes, which Rosswe noticed. She asked, "Issei, is something wrong?" A big sigh escaped his lips as he replied, "Well, The girls decided to take a break from our relationship 2 years ago. I haven't heard anything from them, but I've heard from Surzex from time to time that they're doing well. Rosswe immediately felt bad and said, I am so sorry, issei. If I had known, I wouldn't have brought it up. But if that's the case, does that mean you're taken by someone else now since you have a child? Issei chuckled nervously before answering, It's complicated. Eri is my adopted daughter. I've been her father for the past 3 months, and I'm still single since I've just been living in the woods. Rosswe secretly pumped her fist in excitement before saying, Oh wow. Is it alright if I accompany you for a while? I'm currently on my break from teaching and decided to spend it here in Kyoto. Issei rubbed his chin in thought but then said, Sure. It would be great if Eri had a mother or sister figure during her early stages like this. Rosswe blushed again but smiled. Yeah, but this is kind of embarrassing. Do you have a spare room at your home I could use? Odin decided to mess with me again, and my bank account went from pretty rich to only a single dime, all used on drinks for Valhalla. Chuckling a little, Issei nodded. Sure, but you're going to have to help me with house chores every once in a while and help take care of Eri. Then it's all good. The Valkyrie nodded with a smile. Of course. I'd love to help wherever I can, but I think Eri wants some of that muffin you're holding. Looking down where she was pointing, he saw Eri reaching her hands out toward the muffin with stars in her eyes. He smiled warmly and took a few small chunks out of the muffin before feeding her some. The three sat and talked for a bit longer before they left the cafe to go see Santa Claus in the mall. It wasn't much, but the pictures of Eri and Santa made both Issei and Rosswe smile proudly. Later, Issei took Rosswe to his truck, and she was in awe. Wow, nice wheels, Issei. But I never took you for a truck type of guy. Issei raised an eyebrow at her. What did you think I would drive? Rosswe paused before responding, Definitely a muscle car. You would have used it to impress girls or something like that. Issei felt a slight flush of embarrassment. Was he really that eager for a harem? He thought to himself, I sound kind of desperate. The three of them climbed into the truck and drove back to his cabin. Rosswe's eyes sparkled with delight as she admired the decorations. Did you put up all these decorations yourself? It looks amazing. Issei chuckled at her enthusiasm. Yeah, I might have gone a bit overboard for Christmas. It's my favorite holiday, and now that I'm on my own, I can do whatever I want. The white-haired woman scratched the back of her head sheepishly as she stepped out of the vehicle while Issei helped Eri out of the truck. Once inside, Issei gave her a tour of the spacious cabin. After a few minutes, Rosswe placed her luggage on her new bed and sighed in relief as she sank into the soft silk sheets. Issei may have been a bit clueless in the past, but Rosswe was now seeing him as independent and considerate as a host. It was genuinely flattering, especially since he hadn't bothered her with any of his usual antics since they reunited. Strangely, a warm feeling began to blossom in her chest, something both foreign and familiar. After a moment of reflection, she realized what she was feeling and murmured to herself, Am I falling for Issei? I mean, he is handsome, and that fatherly vibe is definitely appealing, but… Oh no, I've already fallen for him, haven't I? Like a sign from above, Issei opened her door and asked, Hey Rosswe, would you help me with a photo I want to take with Eri? Rosswe smiled warmly and replied, Sure, what do you need me to do? Issei pulled out a white Christmas sweater and handed it to her. I need you to wear this while I set up the camera, and then we can take a picture together with Eri. Rosswe blushed and stuttered, I like a family photo? Issei nodded innocently. Now come on, we don't want to keep Eri waiting. He took her hand and led her to the couch where Eri was playing with some blocks. When Eri saw them, she giggled and babbled happily. Rosswe smiled at the little girl, picked her up, and sat down on the couch. Meanwhile, Issei adjusted the camera and said, Don't forget to put on the sweater, and could you scoot over a little to the right, please? Rosswe complied, giggling to herself as she patted Eri's head. The little angel looked up at her with bright eyes. After a moment, Issei pressed a button on the camera and joined Rosswe on the couch, sitting a bit too close, which made her blush. Unaware, Issei put his arm around her, and the three of them smiled at the camera. A few weeks had passed and the little family had grown closer. Rosswe eventually asked Issei if he would be her boyfriend, which surprised him since he had planned to ask her first. He happily said yes, and they became a wonderful couple, with Rosswe embracing her role as a mother to Eri. However, she eventually had to return to teaching at Kuo Academy. It was hard to see her leave, but Issei understood, especially since she could teleport back and forth easily. Although it was tough to spend less time together, they made it work. She would leave in the early morning and return around 7 o'clock, appearing in a magical circle where Issei and Eri would greet her. They would chat while he prepared dinner, and when Eri went to bed, they would retreat to their bedroom, with Eri in a crib nearby. In all honesty, it was perfect, and neither of them would trade it for anything. However, as the months passed, unexpected changes were on the horizon. It seemed Issei was destined to become the harem king, even without trying. The Haidu household was relatively quiet since Rosswe started working in Kuo town. She would leave in the morning after breakfast and return later in the evening, allowing them to relax and enjoy dinner together. It was everything Issei had ever wanted in a relationship: no fighting with other girls or competition, just pure bliss. Eri was the cherry on top. Issei cherished her dearly, feeling a deep connection that he couldn't explain. He noticed she was growing quickly, resembling a 2-year-old. After asking Drake about it, he learned that, due to her supernatural nature, she would age faster until adulthood, at which point her growth would slow down. The thought of his little girl growing up tugged at his heart, but he couldn't help but chuckle at how he was acting like an old man but today was different. When Rosswe came home with a troubled expression, Issei sensed something was wrong. He cleared his throat to get her attention, and her head shot up to look at him. She rushed toward him and tackled him onto the couch. "Issei-kun." Issei grunted and patted her head. "Hey, my Valkyrie, what's going on?" She sniffled, pouting. "That idiot Odin called me and made fun of me because Thor and Sif are getting married again while I'm still single." She continued to cry, which amused Issei but also filled him with frustration toward Odin. He ran his fingers through her hair and rubbed her back soothingly. "It's okay, dear. If you want to get married, we can do that whenever you wish." Rosswe perked up and looked at him shyly. Really? But what about the other girls?" Issei sighed, his expression pained. It's fine. I don't think they're coming back. Honestly, I was foolish to expect anything else after 2 whole years. But now I have you, and I wouldn't trade you for the world." Her face turned bright red, and her smile lit up the room. "Then let's get married in 4 months. That should give us some time to plan and get ready." "As you wish, my Valkyrie," Issei replied, sealing it with a kiss. They remained in each other's embrace, enjoying the moment until they heard Eri waking up from her nap. Issei reluctantly got up, much to Rosswe's annoyance but also her understanding. He went to Eri's crib, checked her diaper, and nodded when he saw she was still clean. When he offered her milk, she accepted it eagerly. After burping her, he sat back down with his now fiancée, holding Eri in his arms. They sat in peaceful silence until Rosswe spoke up. "Odin also said I was invited to the wedding. Would you like to come with me? It would be nice for Eri to meet new people and see new places." Issei paused for a moment, considering her words before responding. "Sure, it would be nice to see the old perv. But if he makes any more comments that upset you, I might have to teach him a lesson." Rosswe laughed and hugged him tightly, promising to hold him to that. They stayed like that until dinner, where they enjoyed some spicy curry that Issei had made from his mother's recipe collection. Later that night, Eri went to sleep, leaving the 2 adults to engage in their usual nighttime activities. Issei was grateful for his noise-canceling seals, ensuring Eri wouldn't wake up from the excitement of their playful banter. Time skip a month. It was now June, and our favorite little family was dressed for the wedding. Issei was currently being fussed over by Rosswe, who was making sure his suit looked sharp and that his hair was styled to complement his beard. "Honey, I think you've checked me over at least 12 times already. We look perfect, and we're going to be late if we don't teleport soon." Rosswe paused, taking a deep breath before looking up at him. "Yes, sorry. I'm just worried. This is the first time anyone will know about us, And the first time anyone in Asgard will see me with a man. I just want everything to go well. Issei smiled reassuringly and kissed her forehead. You look beautiful, and you shouldn't worry about how we appear to others. Focus on Eri and me. She took a moment to calm herself and smiled back at him. Thank you, I needed that. Stepping back, she gave him a full view of her white dress, which accentuated her features beautifully. Wow, I still can't believe how stunning you are. If I weren't already marrying you, I might have dropped to one knee right here. Rosswe blushed and turned away. Thanks, you look pretty handsome yourself. Nearby, a giggle caught their attention. They turned to see Eri, who had grown to look like a 2.5-year-old. Ah, and you look adorable too, Eri dear. Rosswe said as she picked up the toddler and gave her a gentle kiss on the horn. Issei still found it surprising to see the draconian horn on his daughter's head, which had grown unexpectedly. Drake had mentioned sensing her draconic nature. However, he couldn't dwell on that now. They needed to leave soon to avoid being late for the wedding's meet and greet. All right girls, we need to go now, he said, smiling at them. Rosswe pouted but nodded, approaching him with a bag filled with items for Eri. Once close enough, Issei formed his transportation seal, and they vanished toward their destination. A moment later, after teleporting, Issei and his family found themselves in the central chamber of the Rainbow Bridge. As they walked a bit, they stepped out to behold the splendor of Asgard. Nice place, isn't it, Odin? Issei remarked, sensing the All-Father's presence even before turning to him. The All-Father chuckled, a playful smile on his face. Ah, it's good to see you, my boy. I've enjoyed hearing from my ravens about you. To think you'd start dating and even ask my former Valkyrie to marry you. Odin's gaze shifted to the child in Rosswe's arms, a knowing smirk on his face as he began to walk. Well, come on now, we don't want to miss the wedding by discussing trivial matters. Rosswe shot a glare at the old man but followed along anyway. I don't think it's appropriate to talk like that about someone's fiancé, especially when that man could easily hold his own against you, you old rascal. Issei playfully tapped her on the head for her choice of words in front of Eri but added, she's right, you know. As a dragon, I'm quite protective of my treasures, especially my mate. Odin laughed heartily. Ah, but what's life without a little danger? Besides, today will be fun. The two adults exchanged exasperated glances, shaking their heads in unison as they followed the old god to the main hall. It took no longer than 10 minutes to arrive, where they found many gods, valkyries, and other beings from the supernatural world. Issei even spotted a few friends, including Serorg and Vale. He noticed Vale's peerage with her, and Kuroka blushed and winked at him. Issei felt a blush creep onto his cheeks but quickly composed himself, waving back at her without approaching, as he was busy following Rosswe and Odin. As they walked, many in the hall turned to look at them, some curious about who Issei was and others wondering why Rosswe was holding a child. A few chatty members murmured among themselves, speculating that Rosswe had secretly had a child with this mysterious man. Issei couldn't help but chuckle to himself. They sure are loud, thinking I'm some sort of supermodel. Really? I didn't think I looked that good. I'd say I'm at least average. Rosswe and Odin exchanged glances, both thinking the same thing. Doesn't he realize how much better he looks now? He literally looks like a heartthrob. The two Asgardians shook their heads at the brunette, seemingly unaware of how much he had matured in the looks department and how all the women in the hall were gazing at him with admiration. After a moment of contemplation, they arrived at their destination, stopping right in front of Thor and Sif, who were seated on their thrones while everyone watched. Ah, father, it's good to see you have brought our last two guests. I must say, it's a pleasure to see you, Thor greeted, a tall man with a long beard and his trusty hammer by his side. Oh, and who might this be? Thor gestured toward Eri, who was cradled in Rosswe's arms. Rosswe blushed slightly and smiled. This is Eri, the adopted daughter of myself and my fiancé. The room fell silent, disbelief washing over everyone. The forever version, as they called her, had managed to find a partner and a child without anyone knowing. At that moment, Vale burst into laughter, drawing everyone's attention. To think my rival has become a family man. How the world has changed. Isn't that right, issei Hayaru? Gasps echoed through the crowd as they turned to look at the new issei, whose longer hair and beard complemented his new look, making him appear even more appealing to the women and a respectable man in the eyes of the men present. Holy cow, that's issei? Shouted Kuroka. Issei chuckled and waved. Yeah, it's me, but it really shouldn't be that surprising, right? I mean, I haven't changed that much. I may have a fiancé and a child now, but I've always wanted a family and a partner. His words made everyone pause for a moment. It actually made sense. Issei had always been a good person who would protect the weak and those he loved with his life. In every respect, he was a true hero, his usual antics seemingly absent now. Once they recovered from their surprise, everyone cheered and raised a toast to the savior of the universe, the one who helped bring peace to the major factions and foster positive change. Issei blushed slightly at the praise and shook his head good-naturedly. Turning back to Thor and Sif, he bowed and greeted them. It's good to see you, Sir Thor and Lady Sif. I hope you two are happy in your marriage, and may you live virtuously. Sif smiled at Issei and thanked him. Thank you, Red Dragon Emperor. It's good to see you without your usual antics and becoming a model man for others to aspire to. Issei smiled in return. Thank you for the compliment. Now, I think it's time for the ceremony to begin, so we will speak with you later once the ceremony is over. Thor and Sif nodded, bidding their farewells for the moment. After Issei and Rosswe left, the ceremony officially began. It lasted about an hour, but once it concluded, the festivities commenced. The dance floor was filled with various supernatural races, but Issei stayed close to his fiancée for most of it, only really chatting with Vale, Kuroka, and Sarorg. He noticed Kuroka glancing at him a couple of times, but he remained silent, unsure of how to approach it. He had once wanted a harem, but now he was perfectly happy with his fiancée. Unbeknownst to him, Rosswe observed the situation and contemplated approaching Kuroka when Issei was away to discuss things privately. A little while into the party, Thor shouted, "All right everyone, let's do the annual lift challenge of Asgard. If anyone can lift my hammer, they shall become a new thunder and lightning god in the world." The crowd cheered and gathered around the hammer Thor had placed in the center of the dance floor. Many attempted to lift it, but none could even make it budge. Vala turned to her best friend and rival. "Are you going to try?" "I will for the fun of it, but I'm curious to see if you can do it." Issei hummed in thought. "Sure, I'll give it a shot, but only after you, since I don't want to steal your thunder by lifting it first." Vala smirked. "I'll lift that hammer and show you, my rival. Maybe we can have an after-party at your place this time." The Red Dragon Emperor rolled his eyes. "Yeah, right. Not like I can go back to your family home after that one incident with your parents walking in on us." Vale blushed. "You're the one who suggested we play that ridiculous game of Twister. I should have won if it weren't for you being bigger than me." He laughed at his rival, much to her annoyance. "Yeah, but I still won. I just wish your parents hadn't walked in on us after you fell on top of me and made such a big deal about it." Vale groaned at the memory of her parents' reaction. "Yeah, I still get teased about it. They keep asking when I'll bring you over again and if we're dating." Kuroka and Issei laughed at this, causing Vale to blush. "Hey, it's not that funny. You try having your family tease you all the time. What's worse is that even Albion is starting to nag me to get into a relationship and settle down. What the heck, I thought she was on my side." At this, Albion spoke through her wings. "It's not my fault I'm affected by your hormones. You're at a time in your life when you should settle down, and unlike me, you have a strong partner right there." Vale and Albion began to bicker as the host of the Divine Dividing Gear attempted to lift the hammer. To Vale's irritation, it didn't budge, and as she walked away, she kicked it, declaring it a stupid hammer that she didn't need anyway. Thor's sweat dropped at this, along with everyone else, wondering what had upset the White Dragon Emperor so much. Now it was Issei's turn, and the crowd watched, curious if he would be able to lift the legendary weapon. The young man approached the hammer and reached down for the handle so casually that they thought he wasn't taking it seriously. They were right, Issei wasn't really trying. He didn't need another title. To everyone's surprise, he actually lifted the hammer, so unexpectedly that when someone dropped a pin, the sound echoed in the silence. Guess I'm a god of thunder and lightning now. That's neat, I guess. Anyway, does anyone know what I do with these new godly responsibilities? Odin laughed heartily, causing Thor and a few others to join in. After a moment, Odin composed himself and replied, "It's pretty simple. In a few seconds, the fates will appear and give you your godly titles. You'll basically be a god, dragon, devil hybrid, and you can do whatever you want, as long as you remember to respond to those who praise you every once in a while." Issei nodded. I kind of expected more, but then again I've seen some lazy gods before. I honestly thought there'd be more to it. Shrugging, he walked over to Rosswe and Eri, letting the 4-year-old examine the hammer up close. She giggled and patted it. A small cough from Thor caught Issei's attention. It took him a moment to realize, and he threw the hammer back to its owner, receiving a nod from the god. Just then, the fates arrived, each distinct in appearance. One was a young girl, another a young woman, and the third a woman in her late 30s or 40s. After appearing, they spoke for all to hear. All hail the new god of lightning, thunder, loyalty, redacted, and dragons. Now and forever, Issei Haidu, the apocalypse defier and new dragon god, fight with honor and protect the realms. They departed shortly after, but not before giving him a wink that sent a shiver down Issei's spine. The party continued, with Rosswe and Sif gushing over Eri for a large portion of it. At the end of the celebration, they said their goodbyes and left with Vale and Kuroka. Time skip, Issei and his group arrived at his home, with Vale and Kuroka following behind. The two were taken aback by how lovely it all looked. "Wow, what a nice place for your home, Issei," Kuroka said with a playful tone. The Dragon Emperor smiled and nodded. "Yep, it's been my home for 2 years now. I'm going to put Eri to bed. If you'd like something to drink, the kitchen is right over there." He gestured toward the kitchen, prompting Vale to nod and head over to the fridge. Issei left shortly after with Eri, leaving Rosswe alone with Kuroka. "So, I've noticed you've been giving Issei some hints and looks," Rosswe said with a slight glare. Kuroka gulped and stammered, "Yeah, I still have feelings for him from before, so seeing him again made me want to pursue him. He's still interested in a harem, right?" The question carried a weight that Rosswe recognized. "Unsure if he still wants that. I've brought it up before, but he just says he's happy with how things are now between us. But I do wonder if he would accept others if they asked." Kuroka's cat ears drooped. "So you think he won't accept me?" Rosswe frowned at how sad and defeated Kuroka looked. "It's complicated, but I think if you asked, he might consider it. Personally, I like you a lot, and we are friends, even if we don't talk much anymore since I'm busy with work. I'd honestly be happy to have you in our relationship and get closer to you." Just then, they heard a choking sound and turned to see Vale, blushing and recovering from nearly choking on her orange juice. "Wait, so if I asked him to be my husband too, you'd be all right with it?" Vale asked, her cheeks flushed. Rosswe blinked in surprise before nodding. Sure, I guess. You two are already really close, and if I'm being honest, I thought you two would have gotten together before I even got together with him." Vale's mouth dropped open in shock. It was that obvious? Kuroka and Rosswe nodded, causing the White Dragon Emperor to fall to her knees, lamenting how it wasn't fair and how she wished she could have gotten with Issei sooner. The two watched until Issei approached them, curious about what was going on. Kuroka smiled and explained, "Oh, nothing, just that Vale is upset that she could have been in a relationship with you much sooner if she had known she had a chance." Issei tilted his head in confusion. "Wait, what? She wants to be in a relationship with me?" The sound of Kuroka and Rosswe's face-palming filled the room. Moments later, Vale finally gathered her courage and walked toward Issei. When she reached him, he blushed and opened his mouth to speak, but to his surprise, Vale leaned in and kissed him. He found himself caught up in the moment, unsure of what to do. He glanced at Rosswe for guidance, only to widen his eyes in shock at the sight of Kuroka sharing a kiss with Rosswe, who was also looking at him for advice. In a moment of panic, he used a small telepathy spell to ask, "What do we do?" Rosswe replied, I don't know. How did this even happen? I mean, I said I liked her but didn't mention anything about being bi. Issei shrugged in the embrace he found himself in. I don't know, should I kiss back or something? The Valkyrie thought for a moment before returning the shrug. I mean, I'm okay with it if you're okay with me kissing Kuroka. Issei raised an eyebrow. Sure, I guess, but I don't think we're going to get much sleep tonight if this goes further. Is it weird that I'm into this? Rosswe asked. Nope, I actually think it's pretty exciting. But wouldn't that make this a polygamous relationship if we all started dating? Issei said as he playfully nudged Valley onto the kitchen table. Rosswe took a moment to think. I mean, yeah, it would, but won't we need a bigger bed for this? Issei grinned. Nah, I have some magic to make it bigger if need be. It's nice to sometimes sleep in a large bed, or just reminisce about old times. The two were interrupted by Kuroka. Let's take this to the bedroom. I don't think I can wait any longer. Issei glanced at Valley, who had a dreamy expression and a playful smile. This was really happening and he wasn't sure how to feel about it. But his mixed emotions didn't stop him from picking up Valley and heading to the bedroom, while Kuroka did the same with Rosswe. It was going to be a long night in the Hayado household, which would soon be growing by 2 members, and only time would tell if the harem king would return to the world. Chapter 2 finished, 4,187 words. Inside a college dorm somewhere in Japan, light filtered in through the window of a particular college dorm room. The morning sunlight barely peeked inside to illuminate the space. The 2 beds were empty yet messy, with mountains of textbooks strewn about on the floor, along with a few pizza boxes and cup noodles. The desks were cluttered with piles of papers and notebooks mixed in with textbooks. In other words, it was your typical college dorm room. What made it special was the girl sitting at one of the desks with messy red hair, who appeared to be asleep, drool connecting her to the paper her face rested upon. However, she wasn't the only occupant. In a beanbag chair sat a black-haired girl, her hair just as messy, with dark circles under her eyes and a few food stains on her loosely fitting tank top. If you knew these two, you would never expect to see them like this. But this was just how it had been for Rias Gremory and Akino Himejima ever since they started college, taking on responsibilities for their new club activities along with the mountains of regular schoolwork and devil work. Both were highly respected and regarded as queens by those around them. Right now, they were both overworked young adults just trying to get through their college days so they could return to their friends and family. The two even wondered if Rias's brother would consider adding a college level to the circles of hell to punish sinners for their crimes in the future, because to them, college felt more like hell than hell itself with how challenging it was. Speaking of the 2 girls, it seemed one of their phones went off, waking one of them from her slumber. Akino was the unfortunate one, and she quickly pressed the snooze button on her phone to silence the alarm. She groaned as she glanced at her phone, realizing she had only gotten 4 hours of sleep, which had become her new normal. Turning her head tiredly to her friend and leader of her peerage, she said, "Rias, get up, we have school in 20 minutes. All she received in return was silence, prompting her to sigh and grab a red dragon emperor plushie from the ground, tossing it at her master and hitting her gently on the head. Rias, however, merely groaned and remained lying there for a few more moments before lifting her head to look at Akino. "Why did we agree to go to college again?" she asked. Akino sighed, having heard this question multiple times over the past 2 years. "I don't know, but we just have a little longer until we're done and can return to our old lives." The heiress of the Gremory family lamented dramatically, "It's not fair. Why couldn't we have pursued something like modeling instead? Like Kiba did?" The half-fallen angel shrugged. "I ask myself that every day. Speaking of which, what day is it again?" Rias lifted her head to look at a calendar and replied, "March 28th, why?" Akino grabbed her phone and checked her calendar, realizing they had something scheduled that day after classes. "Because it seems we have a meeting with your brother today, and we can finally take a break for once." The red-haired girl wiped happy tears from her eyes. "Oh, thank goodness, I don't even remember the last time we had a break. We couldn't even celebrate Christmas since we had to help with our clubs over the break. I miss Issei so much." Akino nodded in agreement, They hadn't had a real break since summer, which had mostly been spent sleeping and dealing with demon paperwork, hardly a break at all. Then Aquino realized something and turned to Rias. Hey, when was the last time we called issei or the others? Rias thought for a moment before shrugging. I don't know. Since we aren't allowed to use magic to communicate on Earth due to the Devil Council's rules, we haven't really contacted anyone. It also doesn't help that we don't have anyone's number besides my brother's and Graphia's. The black-haired girl paused, then remembered something. But didn't we say we were going to tell Issei we wanted to continue our relationship with him during our summer break? Rias, hearing this, began to worry and sat up, now fully awake. I thought we did. Or did we? I can't really remember much because I was so tired that my memories are all mixed up, but I could have sworn we had my brother give us his number and texted him. Right. The silence that followed indicated they probably hadn't, and they had essentially ghosted the guy they loved for 2 years. In other words, it was a code red, and they quickly jumped up to call Surzex and Graphia. Meanwhile, in the Hayadu household, Issei sneezed, causing Rosswe and Kuroka to look at him curiously. Valley responded, "Bless you." However, being a devil, she grimaced as her head throbbed from saying something holy, which made Issei and the others laugh. Valley pouted and exclaimed, "It's not that funny. Besides, it's good etiquette." Issei rolled his eyes at her words and replied, "Sure it is. I could also say the same about wearing pants at the dining table." The white-haired girl glanced down at her bare legs before looking back at her lover. "You win this round, Issei, but I'll win the next one." The Red Dragon Emperor chuckled and returned to feeding Eri some mashed baby food. A stray thought crossed his mind, causing him to frown as he looked at Rosswe. "Dear, how have the others been? Like Kiba, Gasper, and the girls, I mean." The girls at the table were surprised to hear Issei mention them but relaxed when they saw his smile, indicating he wasn't upset. Rosswe, who knew most of their whereabouts, spoke up. "From what I heard, Asia is helping the church and the angel faction while also doing her part in healing people around the world. That means she's never in one place for too long." Issei smiled at this, thinking about how busy Asia must be. Even though she hadn't spoken to him in 2 years, he couldn't be angry at her. Blame his kind nature, but he couldn't hate anyone unless they were truly despicable. "That's wonderful. I bet she's happy helping people like she always wanted." "What about Kiba?" Issei asked while wiping Eri's face with a napkin. Rosswe thought for a moment before recalling what she had heard from Azazel. "I believe he started a modeling career with that girl from the student council as his manager, and from what I heard, he's dating her." Issei stopped and turned, shocked. "What? He's dating Tsubaki? I can't believe he finally noticed she had feelings for him after all this time." The girls nodded, as they too had noticed Tsubaki's feelings for the blonde knight, who had seemed oblivious, which sometimes frustrated them. Rosswe continued, "Yes, that was her name. As for the last ones I know about, Aquino and Rias have been struggling greatly with all the work they need to do for their college classes, clubs, and devil duties." Issei raised an eyebrow. "Really? Those two are struggling that hard? I didn't think college was that difficult. I graduated early with a teaching degree." "Wait, what?" said everyone at the table except for Eri, for obvious reasons. Issei looked at them for a second before tilting his head. "What? Why you guys surprised? My bachelor's degree is literally right there on the wall." They turned to look where he was pointing and saw the framed degree with his name on it. All they could do was say, "Huh." Turning back in their seats, they saw Issei pick Eri up out of the high chair. He walked over to a chair at the table and sat down to continue talking. "So, Kuroka, do you know what Kaneko is doing?" Kuroka nodded proudly. "Yes, Chiron is training with me and the leader of the yokai to better harness her senjutsu power and hopefully grow into an adult." The others were confused by this, prompting Kuroka to explain. "The reason she's so short and petite isn't because that's how she's grown into a woman, but because she didn't undergo the Nikomata ceremony when she was young like I did. Instead, her body isn't physically developed, and through her training and exposure to senjutsu, we hope to correct it." The others were speechless, and Valley asked, "So why hasn't she talked to Issei then?" Kuroka grimaced, looking down sadly. To unlock her adult form, she must undergo sage-like training, meaning she has to be one with nature and focus solely on it. This is already difficult, but since she's in love with a certain dragon boy, she's easily distracted. Issei's eyes widened. Wait, you don't mean what I think you mean, do you? The yellow-eyed Nikomata sighed. I'm afraid so. She's been distancing herself from you to improve herself and couldn't even inform you because her training would be jeopardized if she focused on anything else. Sorry, but she hasn't been able to talk to you because of that. The Dragon Emperor felt conflicted upon hearing this and asked, was there really no other way? Kuroka nodded sadly. I'm afraid not. The rules for senjutsu training are very strict, and with her condition, we had to be even stricter. Issei felt a thump in his heart at hearing the voice of his first love. It was a mix of pain and solace, as he recalled her telling him that she loved him. It was a bittersweet feeling, and after a moment of coming to terms with his emotions, he answered, "Hello, Rias." On the other end of the phone, he could hear a small sniffle, but he chose to ignore it for the time being as Rias's shaky voice responded, "I am so sorry, Lisa. I didn't mean to forget to contact you for so long." Issei closed his eyes, and Rosswe rubbed circles on his shoulder. She wasn't alone in this action. Vale and Kuroka also did their best to show him that they were there for him and that everything would be okay. I understand that whatever reason you might have had for not calling was for a good reason, Rias, but that doesn't make the pain of waiting for you go away so easily. That's understandable and I'm sorry. Akino is sorry too. We've both been so busy with college, work, and club activities that we haven't had any time outside of school, said the very distraught young woman. Issei felt a pang of hurt hearing that it was the reason for their silence over the past 2 years, but he was also relieved it wasn't something worse, like falling out of love or developing feelings for someone else while they were apart. Okay, I sort of understand. But how did you remember to contact me now of all times? Issei asked, curiosity getting the better of him. Rias let out a sad giggle that made Issei's heart ache. I complained to Akino about how much I missed you after waking up this morning. It dawned on us that we hadn't talked to you in a while. Akino pointed out that we hadn't been in contact with any of the peerage either, which led to us panicking and having my brother give us your number so we could speak with you as quickly as possible. Issei paused, feeling a mix of embarrassment and warmth. I don't know how to reply to that other than to say I'm a bit embarrassed that you figured that all out by missing me so much. A small but meaningful smile tugged at his lips. Vale, Kuroka, and Rosswe each smiled with him, happy that the man they loved and cherished was smiling with his usual cheer. After a few moments of collecting his thoughts, Issei spoke again. If you're not too busy, would you two like to come to my place and talk face to face? I'd love to see you both in person and be in your presence again. There was a brief silence on the phone line before Rias responded affirmatively. Issei felt a surge of joy at her words and eagerly provided his teleportation circle coordinates before saying his goodbyes. As he hung up the phone, Issei felt the heavy burden of past despair lift from his shoulders. The negative thoughts about what had transpired between him and the girls began to fade away, like old paint peeling off to reveal a brighter, fresher surface beneath. Instead, he felt hopeful, dare he say optimistic about the future, a future where his past relationships could heal and become whole once more. His smile was so radiant that the girls couldn't resist hugging him and planting kisses on his cheeks. Issei's happiness spread like wildfire throughout the house. Even little Eri was giggling and smiling at her father, who scooped her up and kissed her on the forehead, earning even more delighted laughter. Time skip. The house was filled with a quiet anticipation for their two guests. It had been a little while since the call ended, and the supernatural family had cleaned up their dishes and set 2 fresh plates of food on the table for Rias and Akino. Issei insisted on preparing the meal, wanting to welcome them with warmth and comfort after what they had endured during their college days. As the clock struck 9:30 a.m., the teleportation circle in the center of the living room glowed with crimson light, the insignia of the Gremory household shining brightly at its center. Issei watched with bated breath as Rias and Akino materialized, Rias's crimson hair flowing freely and Akino's ribbons swaying in the rush of air from the teleportation. However, Issei quickly noticed more than just their iconic features. He saw the bags under their eyes marring their usually flawless skin, their hair hastily arranged, and most importantly, the tears welling in their eyes as they looked at him, fresh tear marks on their cheeks from recent crying. This made Issei smile sadly yet feel a sense of happiness that what they had said was undeniably true. As the teleportation completed, Issei stepped forward, his voice filled with raw emotion. "Hey, you two, it's been a while." Rias and Aquino sniffled, tears streaming down their faces as they reached out to embrace the man they loved. They held each other tightly for several minutes before separating. Issei, ever the lovable dork, gently guided them toward the dining room table, where he sat them down to eat. The two girls gratefully accepted his food, enjoying it not just because of their relationship beginning to mend but also because Issei had prepared a delicious meal that brought tears of joy after 2 years of mostly takeout and ramen noodles. Once they finished eating, the girls complimented Issei's cooking, and he beamed with pride at their praise while clearing the dishes and placing them in the sink. The conversation that followed unfolded slowly as Issei cleaned the plates and cups, drying them and putting them away. They talked about the girls' college experiences, sharing both the good and the bad. Unfortunately, the bad outweighed the good, much to Issei's dismay. From having to do extra work for others to dealing with countless admirers, Rias and Aquino had endured a challenging environment for the past 2 years leading up to graduation. As they recounted their experiences, Issei felt a surge of anger, imagining himself taking drastic measures against the university. The thought of teachers flirting with them only fueled his frustration, making him want to act out in a dramatic fashion. Fortunately, Rias and Aquino noticed his agitation and, along with Rosswe, Kuroka, and Vale, helped calm him down. Once Issei regained his composure, the conversation shifted to what he had been up to over the past 2 years, leaving both Rias and Aquino astonished by his stories. Issei had graduated college early with a teaching degree, adopted little Eri, and progressed further than ever with Rosswe, Vale, and Kuroka. It was a lot for Rias to process, and she fainted on the couch. Aquino caught her and gently placed her on her shoulder as the Ravenet tried to come to terms with what she had just heard. Aquino, clearly focused on the details, asked, "So, you lost your virginity to Rosswe of all people?" Blushing, Issei nodded. "Yup, but what do you mean by that? Is something wrong with it being Rosswe?" Seeing Issei's genuine confusion, Aquino explained, "Well, it's not that she's a bad candidate or anything. It's just, I sort of expected it to maybe be Rias, myself, or even Irina. And from my memory, Rosswe was never that bold to approach you first, so I expected someone more assertive to take up such an honor." Issei couldn't deny what Aquino was saying. He too had thought he would lose his virginity to Rias or one of the more forward girls in his life, but fate had other plans for him. It also didn't help that Rosswe, for as long as Issei had known her, and even now as he was with her, wasn't the assertive type. Sure, she had her moments, but usually, it was him who noticed the way she looked at him with longing before he initiated their usual NTMT moments. So Aquino wasn't wrong. It was more about timing, place, and circumstance that led to them losing their virginities together. It was surprising that the Norse Valkyrie herself had never been with a man or woman despite being absolutely gorgeous and perfect in Issei's eyes. He couldn't deny that he loved being her first, to be her one and only felt perfect to his heart and mind. Shaking his thoughts away, Issei focused back on Aquino. "I understand where you're coming from, but I won't say I'm not pleased that it was with her that I did it." Aquino nodded in acceptance. "As you should. She's a great woman, and I'm glad it was someone as kind as her to do the honors in my and Rias's stead." Everyone smiled at Aquino's words, with Rosswe smiling the brightest. After giving Aquino a small thank you, they all began discussing the future of their relationship, but first, they needed to wake Rias. A few weeks later, after Rias and Aquino had apologized, they started working to mend their relationship with Issei. The Hyudo house had become much livelier, as Rias and Aquino visited as often as they could. Issei encouraged them to drop some unnecessary commitments, such as the clubs they were involved in and helping others when asked. He recognized that Rias and Aquino were being exploited for their labor and popularity by those clubs, so he decisively put an end to the idea of helping ungrateful people. This change reduced the girls' workload by 30%. After further discussions about their schedules, Issei managed to help eliminate an additional 15% by organizing their devil duties. He arranged for someone to assist with paperwork under the Gremory clan's workforce and set up patrols on their land for stray devils, with designated groups who would be compensated for their work. The only remaining responsibilities for the girls were their college assignments and diplomatic duties, which Issei supported as much as he could, whether through study sessions or taking notes for them when they couldn't attend devil meetings and conferences. Overall, Issei had become the perfect partner, both at home and in their professional lives. It also helped that he frequently brought Eri along, which lifted the spirits of everyone around the cheerful little girl. Speaking of Eri, she had grown quite a bit in these few weeks. Issei found it surprising how quickly she seemed to be developing, almost faster than an ordinary baby. Given her connection to the supernatural world, it made sense, but it also led Issei to wonder about Eri's biological parents and what made her grow so rapidly. Despite these lingering questions, Issei dedicated himself to his responsibilities, raising Eri as best as he could while planning his wedding with Rias and Aquino. Initially, Rias and Aquino felt a bit anxious upon hearing about the wedding, fearing they might not be included as Issei's brides after their significant mistake. But after so much time repairing their relationship, Issei proposed to the two, who quickly accepted and cried until Issei had to call their families to help calm them down. Speaking of families, Rias's mother, father, and two brothers, Surzex, Graphia, and little Milikas, were overjoyed by this news, along with Barakil, Aquino's father. With that in mind, Issei, when not helping out any of the girls or doing chores, had planned a little trip. It wasn't far, but it would be just him and Eri while the others were busy at work or college. It had been some time since Issei last met up with Yasaka of the yokai faction and her daughter Kunu. In fact, it had probably been a year since they met face-to-face outside of their usual FaceTime calls. Issei was really looking forward to it and was also hoping to ask Yasaka if he could get a venue from her for the marriage ceremony coming up in the next few months. As the Dragon Emperor drove on the road leading to the temple where Yasaka lived, he enjoyed the beautiful scenery. The drive itself was pleasant, with trees and various pieces of Japan's history dotting the landscape. The slight wind rustled the trees and leaves, creating a picturesque scene. The bright sun shone onto the tree canopy, casting thick patches of shadows that highlighted Kyoto's beauty. However, this breathtaking view had to come to an end as Issei arrived at his location. In retrospect, he could have just teleported there, but Eri loved driving in the truck, so paying for gas was a small price to pay to see her happy. After parking his truck in the lot marked by a big red archway at the start of the path up to the temple, Issei got out and unbuckled Eri, who was looking around in childish wonder. Next, he strapped her into a chest carrier before locking the truck and heading up the path with her on his chest, making sure his diaper bag was complete before taking it with him. The last thing Issei needed was to change Eri without any wipes. That mistake had been made before, and he was determined it wouldn't be repeated. The duo of father and daughter made their way up the steps while Issei hummed a tune that Eri enjoyed. The tune was from a show she liked, and Issei found himself enjoying it with her on occasion. Little by little, the Dragon Emperor made his way up, taking a few breaks to let Eri enjoy the scenery before continuing. Issei had long been aware of the guards following him, but he understood they were there to escort him and had no hostility aimed at him or his daughter. In fact, he sensed that a few of the female guards were cooing at how cute Eri was. His daughter was indeed the cutest thing in the universe, and he would defend that claim fiercely. The path to the temple ended after a long hike, and upon his arrival at the summit, he was greeted by two familiar faces. "Yo, Yasaka-chan, Kunu-chan," Issei greeted. In response, the two blonde fox yokai greeted him back. Kunu waved as he got closer, and Yasaka giggled into her paper fan as she spoke in her naturally attractive voice. "Greetings, Issei, it's good to see you again. Now, who might this little one be?" she asked, closing her fan and looking at Eri with a wave of maternal energy. The wave of energy was so strong that Eri looked at Yasaka and smiled, reaching out to her in a grabbing manner while babbling cutely. Issei smiled wide and unstrapped Eri before handing her to Yasaka. "This is my little dragon lily, Eri Hyudo, and she is my daughter." Kunu's eyes widened in shock, and Yasaka giggled while taking Eri into her arms. The little girl nestled her head against Yasaka, finding comfort as if it were a pillow. While Kunu was frozen in shock, Yasaka spoke playfully, noting that Kunu was just like her father. Issei chuckled to himself, agreeing that she certainly had some of his more unique qualities, particularly a humorous love for certain things. Yasaka then turned her attention to Issei, suggesting they head inside to talk. She mentioned that Kunu likely had just as many questions as she did, and Issei seemed eager for any news about Kaniko's training. Upon hearing Kaniko's name, Issei became serious and quickly agreed, helping the dazed Kunu by picking her up and walking alongside Yasaka to a more suitable place to talk. After a small time skip, Kunu was playing while Issei and Yasaka talked. Issei had already gone over recent events involving Eri, the girls, and how Rias and Akino had apologized and started to mend their relationship. The blonde nine-tailed vixen was happy to hear such good news, showing her joy by giving Issei a heartfelt hug and a gentle kiss on his cheek. "I'm glad that things have been going your way, Issei-kun. If anyone deserves it, I believe it would be you," she said warmly. Returned the hug and kissed her on the forehead, expressing how much her words meant to him. "Thank you, Yasaka-chan. Your words mean a lot to me, and I'm glad to have someone like you in my life." His sincerity made Yasaka blush. Giggling to herself, Yasaka stayed in Issei's arms, completely enraptured by his presence and the aura of protectiveness and love that surrounded him. After a few minutes of silence, Kunu spoke up, making both adults look at her. "Mom, Issei, can I ask you something? It's important." Noticing Kunu's nervous fidgeting, Issei and Yasaka exchanged glances, wondering what was troubling her. Yasaka let go of Issei for a moment and addressed her daughter in a calm and soothing voice, reassuring her that it was always all right to ask them anything. "My daughter, it is always all right to ask of us whatever it is you need. As long as it is reasonable and within our ability to accomplish, we can do whatever it is that you seek from us." Kunu closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and then opened her golden eyes, reminiscent of a dazzling flower. She looked at her mother and Issei before asking what had been on her mind for a while. "Mother, can Issei become my father? Sort of like he is to Eri?" Issei and Yasaka were reasonably shocked, especially Issei, who hadn't expected such a question from Kunu, who had often claimed she would marry him when she got older. However, he wasn't against the idea of being her father. He realized he harbored no romantic feelings for her but felt a strong need to protect and keep her happy, similar to how he felt about Eri. If Yasaka agreed, he would gladly adopt Kunu as his own. Glancing at Yasaka, Issei noticed a mix of emotions wash over her: happiness, sadness, and a deep longing. "Yasaka," he said, catching her attention. With a genuine expression of affection, Issei continued, "I wouldn't mind having Kunu as one of my own, and if you were willing, I would like to ask you to become one of my brides to make it official. After all, I have loved you for as long as I've known you, so marrying you on such short notice isn't something I would ever regret." Yasaka stared at Issei, the love of her life, who was so far beyond what Kunu's father had ever been. Her cheeks flushed, and her tails wagged as she stuttered out her answer. I accept, and I look forward to our time together from here on out, in